Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review for Smallville Season 5. Yes, we're at the halfway point now. Really been making my way through this series. As usual, I will talk about the three leads and their story arcs because that tends to be really the best way to get into the series, I think. By those three, I of course mean Clark, Lex and Lana. For this season, we don't get quite as many full kind of 10 out of 10 episodes that you get in previous seasons. I think previously, like particularly season 2 and 3, you've had like a real good handful of like 10 out of 10s and stuff. I think that across the board, on an average kind of scale, the grades for the episodes in this are higher than usual. While they may not be perfect 10s, it's that you're hovering around those, a lot of 9s, a lot of 8s and 9s. So it just means that the season on the whole is much more consistent. Lana actually comes off pretty decent in this season. They give her something to do. Her character arc, her journey is integral to what's going on with Clark and Lex. She feels integrated in a real kind of genuine way rather than kind of trying to shoehorn her in there. Obviously we had the meteor shower at the end of season 4, and in that meteor shower there came another spaceship, and that spaceship kind of dictates a lot of what happens through this series. Now Lana saw that spaceship come down, okay? She saw it, Lex hid it, kept it. So that becomes her motivation. It becomes one of her main driving forces throughout this season. What was that spaceship all about? How do we stop what might be an imminent attack or make contact with these aliens or whatever? It gives her motivation. It gives her a drive, which personally I think she's never really had before. Not in this way anyway. It brings her into a relationship with Lex because Lex kind of opens up to her. It appears as though he's being truthful with her, kind of sharing secrets with her, and that's something that is refreshing to her. Down the line, that starts to cave. Cracks start to show in that relationship. She starts to realise he's not quite as truthful as she previously thought he was. I like that relationship. I like that dynamic. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people aren't really... They don't really like the whole Lex and Lana thing. The reason they get together is integral to kind of to this mystery that they're both trying to solve, and it's that kind of brings them together, coupled with the fact that Clark has kind of pushed Lana away. Great job with Lana this season. Probably her best season. Clark's big thing in this season, he's got a few things. So he's going to go up against a new villain in Brainiac. So Brainiac, the brain interactive construct, which is a Kryptonian artificial intelligence that comes out of the ship. Brainiac is all about trying to bring Zod to Earth. And obviously Clark has to stop that, but he also has to figure out across the course of the season that Brainiac isn't actually a good guy, or is in fact a bad guy, because for much of the season he's posing as someone that he's not. So I like that. I love James Marsters in the role of Brainiac. I think he's a really great actor. Yeah, I think what he brings to the role is fantastic. With Clark, he has all this stuff going on. He loses his powers at the beginning of the season, which kind of means that he can really get close to Lana. And actually, it's one of the best episodes of the season when he does that. It's an episode called Mortal, where he's got no powers, he's with Lana, and something goes off, creates this kind of hostage situation, and we find out that Lex was kind of behind it. He wanted to test Clark. And because Clark's got no powers, obviously that test reveals Clark to be human. But when Clark finds out, he confronts Lex and the two come to blows. And it's in that moment that you realise these two, that's it, they're done. They are, from this point on, they are enemies. There's kind of no coming back really from this. So I love that episode, I love that moment, but it's that kind of letting Lana in because he's got no powers, which is kind of turned on its head because obviously he gets his powers back. He has to get his powers back, and then he goes back to secretive Clark mode, and that pushes Lana away. Because of that, it almost kind of pushes her straight into Lex's hands. I love what they do there, but everything kind of culminates in the middle of the season with the death of Jonathan Kent. John Schneider obviously leading the show. He would make a few more appearances in Ghost Farm and Dream Sequences, this kind of thing. But that is the big kind of defining moment for Clark in this season. And the back half of the season is really all about that, struggling with that loss, no longer having that father figure to go to. He doesn't quite, he doesn't trust his biological father, Jor-El. The father that he did trust and look to for guidance has now gone. And so much of the season is about dealing with that. And it's quite heavy. The episode in which Jonathan dies is, again, one of the best of the season. That and Mortal are probably my two favourites, actually, of the season. Reckoning is just an absolute classic of an episode. I think it's brilliantly played by Schneider when he dies. And in fact, in that particular episode, every actor is on point. There's so much going on in it. But every actor does just such a top-notch job. From Clark, Tom Welling, like the experience of losing his father, the emotional response to that. I think Lionel and Lex are great in that as well, the things they've got going on. But I particularly like Schneider's death scene because of the way that he plays it. There's no big speeches, there's no like final looks into each other's eyes where they can say whatever pearl of wisdom he had left. No, he looks at Martha, his wife, he looks at Clark, his son, and then he just dies. And it feels real. It's just this moment that is just so well orchestrated, so well directed and acted and put together, and it just hits you in the feels because this guy's gone. This is it. Jonathan's gone. And he's been such a rock for Clark across the course of these 5 seasons that it kind of makes you wonder what things are going to look like from this point on. So yeah, it's a great defining moment of the show. Like I say, it really gives the season a lot of focus. It felt like they knew where they were going. It felt like they had a plan. The stuff with Brainiac, Lex and Lana kind of being pushed away, and then kind of getting a bit of a kick in the nads for Clark when his father dies. It's just like, it's like everything gets piled on top of Clark during this season, and it's really kind of make or break time. All his safety nets are kind of being pulled away, and he's having to learn to stand on his own 2 feet and kind of embrace his destiny, so to speak. So yeah, really great season in that regard. Lex as well, kind of, I think season 4 was a tipping point where he kind of started to embrace villainy, so to speak, started to become the man we know he's going to become. Season 5, I do think he is kind of, I think some people would argue he's not full-on villain yet, but I think he's there, particularly in the episode Lexmas, which isn't one of my favourite episodes, it must be said. I know it is a bit of a fan favourite. I know a lot of fans love the episode Lexmas. But it does deal with certain stuff that makes you kind of say, actually, this is it. There's no going back for this guy now. He's truly going to lose his soul. And the tragic thing is that he has kind of good reasons for it. He's in his mind, he is the hero, and that's a good quality about any villain. If you want to make a really good villain, you've got to show us why, in their mind, they would perceive themselves to be the hero. And in Lex's mind, he is really saving the planet. Like this pursuit of the alien technology, figuring out who the Kryptonians are, how to stop them if they come back, all this. That's in his mind, his way of being the hero, his way of helping the world. He just goes about it in completely the wrong direction because he's been taught bad habits by Lionel, and he's been betrayed by Helen, and his friends don't kind of tell him the truth and things like that. So yeah, Lex again, as I say, being the standout of the show, it must be said. Michael Rosenbaum doing a brilliant job. Such a fantastic character, a fascinating character. He's just a tragic soul, because you can see how every step of his life he could have gone one way, but he ends up going another. And it's his choice, but there's always elements pulling and pushing him. So I think season 5 is the kind of a culmination of that, where he's really kind of stepped over to the dark side. I do think that this season on the whole has kind of taken things in down a darker avenue, I would say. I think just the tone of it is much darker than we've had previously. I think season 3 got pretty dark, but then season 4 kind of really lightened the mood when they brought Lois in and whatnot. The tone kind of changed a bit, you know, Clark played football and all that. But I think season 5, we definitely get back to darkness, much darker than we've been previously. And I also think they use it as a bit of an excuse to sex things up. If I'm being perfectly honest, there's 3 episodes that come straight after one another, which is Aqua, Thirst, and Exposed. And those 3 episodes, they seriously ramp up the sexy stuff, the sexy side of things. Like in 2 of those episodes, we get Lois in a bikini. You know, in one she goes diving and she kind of meets Aquaman, but she's like, yeah, she's just in a bikini. And then a couple of episodes after, Exposed, again she does the whole the pole dancing routine where she's in the famous American flag kind of bikini setup. But and then like sandwiched in the middle of those 2 episodes, we've got the episode Thirst, which quite frankly is the low point of the season and possibly the low point of the show as a whole. The vampire episode, absolutely terrible. Really, really terrible episode. But it, again, just feels like an excuse to sex things up a bit. Let's get into a sorority house, get all these sorority girls, dress them in skimpy clothing, and get Lana in some leather. And it's just, like I say, I probably wouldn't have noticed it if those episodes had been spaced out. But we got those 3 episodes in a row, and I suddenly realised, blimey, they're really trying to throw a lot more sex into this show this year. And not just that, but the violence as well. I think the violence is upped. Like in the episode Exposed, which deals with like human traffickers. At the start of that episode, a woman is hit by a car, and the way that it's shot, the impact is really felt. It feels brutal. There's moments like that across the season where the violence is just, they kind of up the ante on it. It's like they're just pushing it a little bit more. Let's see how much we can get away with. I don't know how I feel about that. I've always kind of felt with the first 3 or 4 seasons, I felt for the most part it remained relatively family friendly. I mean, it was never really a kids show. Let's face it. There was always stuff in there that was quite, you know, you got to judge for yourself whether you think your kids are ready for it. But you know, there's a reason the box sets on DVD are like rated 12 or 15. So yeah, but I certainly think that they up the ante on the violence and the sex in this season. Definitely the darkest that we've had so far. Not necessarily a criticism, just an observation. We got another 2 members of the Justice League worked into this season. Obviously, the Justice League will happen in this series at some point. We got Bart Allen in the previous season in the episode Run, and here we get Aquaman and we get Cyborg. Now, of the 2, I think I prefer Cyborg, and that's down to the actor. I think the actor does a better job. I warm to him as a character more. I think the guy who plays Aquaman, I can't remember his name. Now, I do believe he has recently been in the Teen Titans show, or the Titans, I think it's just called, which is like a much darker, kind of more mature kind of show. And from what I hear, he's pretty good in that. I think he plays Hawk or Dove or something. But like I say, I've not seen him in that, but I'm reliably told he's pretty good. Here, he feels like the pretty boy, and it feels like that's why they cast him, because his performance isn't particularly great. And in all fairness to him, he is kind of asked to mostly just walk around without a top on. Whereas Cyborg, I feel like he gets more of an arc, more of a story, more of a reason to identify with this guy and feel for this guy and root for him. So yeah, of the 2, he's the character I would probably want to see more of. But we are going to get more of both, because as I say, justice is coming. I do feel like there's a lot of elements in this season that are kind of taken from the XFiles. And I've said this before that even back in the first season, I think a lot of the elements in the show were very X-Files-esque, and a lot of people kind of credit Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They often, when they look at Smallville, they say, "Oh, it was kind of copying Buffy the Vampire Slayer." I think that is just mostly because of the teen angle, putting it in a high school. I can definitely see the correlation there between Buffy and Smallville. But I honestly think that actually X-Files was there first, even before Buffy, and a lot of the elements that went into Smallville, the Freak of the Week elements, I feel like, you can, most Freak of the Weeks you can find an X-Files equivalent. But here they go one step further with the whole UFO thing. Even the ship that Milton Fine or Brainiac comes down in looks very much like a ship that was in the X-Files. Like there's an episode of the X-Files with Krychek when he gets stuck in a bunker. He's got this oil slick stuff coming out of his eyes, and then that goes into the ship. And hey, we get what looks like essentially what could be the same ship, almost the same prop. And then an oil slick kind of thing comes out of that ship and turns into Milton Fine, kind of morphs into Milton Fine, becomes this shapeshifter, which again, X-Files, the shapeshifting bounty hunter aliens, so much of it is in this season. And then you get to the end of the season when it turns out that, Fine, Brainiac, whatever you want to call him, is trying to create this vaccine. So he says. Obviously, Lex thinks he's creating a vaccine. That is what he's trying to create. Fine has got different purposes for it. But no, again, that feels completely riffed from the X-Files, in which much of the the mythology of the X-Files was all about that vaccine. Was all about the syndicate trying to come up with a vaccine for the impending alien invasion, and so like I say, season 5 for me definitely owes more, I would say, to X-Files than it does to Buffy. Another story thread or element that kind of starts to take place in this season, it's in the back half after Jonathan's died, is that Lionel starts to show a softer side, show a better side, starts to kind of, worm his way into Martha's affections, shall we say. It's still not entirely clear as to whether he's full-on good guy or whether he's got some kind of agenda. You always feel like Lionel's got some other kind of agenda going on, even when he's doing something that is good or feels good. And certainly towards the back end of this season, he feels like he's changed his ways. But even if he has changed his ways, I'm not keen on the idea of him and Martha getting together. I know that there was a bit of a spark between the two, even way back in season 2 when Martha went to work for Lionel for a bit. So there was definitely a chemistry there that was at work. But I just feel like after the death of Jonathan, there's no way Martha's gonna go with this guy. There's no, like, whatever spark might be there, I just don't think she would entertain it. She wouldn't allow herself to. That's just me personally. Now, I love seeing these two together on screen. I still love the characters, and it is an interesting dynamic. And I can't deny that the spark was there previously, So, and I get where Lionel's coming from, because we've seen that Lionel's always had a thing for Martha. So I don't feel like that's a change in character for him. I don't think like they're trying to bring something in that wasn't there before. I just feel like the bit that I'm not quite on board with is Martha warming up to him to the extent that she would ever be anything more than friends. And I think for the most part in season 5, they do kind of try and keep it to that level. They do try and make sure that Martha's like, look, there's something there, but let's not go there. But yeah, I know where we go in season 6, so I'm just saying, I'm not on board with Martha. Some of the choices that Martha might make. Of course, Chloe is still one of my favourite characters of this show, and I think once more she gives us every reason to kind of root for her and believe in her, because in this season she reveals to Clark that she knows. So if you remember the end of the last season, the final episode, she kind of followed Clark into the cave, and we learn in the opening episode of this season that she kind of went through with him, and she starts to kind of freeze to death because obviously they're in the Arctic, and Clark's like, oh no, what do I do? But she comes clean and she says, look, I know you can run really fast and you're super powerful, just get me somewhere safe. So he does, and then obviously he now knows that she knows, and he has another ally. And that's one of the elements that I like about season 5. I love that Clark finally has someone to confide in, but not just that he's got someone to confide in, but the fact that it's Chloe as well. I think that that's deserved. I think it's earned. I think Chloe is more than paid her dues by this point to be within the inner circle, so to speak. And yeah, it's just nice. It's nice to have that weight lifted for Clark, to be able to have her to talk to. In that episode, the opening episode of season 5, there's a scene there. Well, it's the scene in the hospital when Chloe has just told Clark that she knows, and I just love that scene. You know, as much as everything that's going on in that episode, there's a lot of action going on in that episode, but despite all that, my favourite scene in that episode is that quiet kind of talky scene between the two of them. So yeah. But like I say, across the board, across the season, Chloe, once again, proving herself to be an invaluable friend for Clark, his best friend, and loyal supporter. Once again, as I did with the previous seasons, to come up with an overall grade for the season, I have taken each individual grade for each episode, averaged it out, to come up with my final grade, and this season gets a 4.25 out of 5, which, you know, if you've been watching my previous reviews, that puts this on an even keel with season 2. So yeah, and again, slightly above season 3, just ever so slightly, which is as much a surprise to me as anyone, because you know, if you just asked me to tell you what my favourite was, I would have said season 3. But looking at it at an objective level, just purely from those scores that I give the individual episodes, I would say, yeah, this is a better season overall. Again, however, my comments still stand that, you know, when you look at the best episode of this season and compare it to the best episodes of season 3, I think I'm still going to take season 3, because Shattered and Memoria, they're pretty hard to beat. But yeah, that's my thoughts on season 5 of Smallville. But what about you? Have you seen it? Did you get to this point? You know, did you watch Smallville for a certain length of time and then kind of dip out and not get back to it? If you have seen season 5, and if you are still watching at this point, please leave your comments below and let me know what you think of this season and where you think it ranks so far amongst the 5 that we've had. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.